Well, I was really lucky when it comes to that because the first 3 films I made all did really well. And I'm struggling now to sort of come back to that level of success. The first proper feature film I made was a documentary, One Day in September. It won the Oscar for Best Documentary. The next film I made was Touching the Void. It made a lot of money and it won the Best British Film of the Year. And then I made The Last King of Scotland as my first feature film, and it won an Oscar for Forest Whitaker. It won the BAFTAs again. So I went on this sort of journey of thinking that, everything I do feels like people want to see it. But of course, ever since then, I've made another 10 films, none of which have done as well. And I think it's one of the challenges of making art, isn't it? That you don't know, all you can do is make the things that appeal to you. And it's interesting, one of the things that was interesting to me about making the film about Saigo Chang, the Chinese artist, was that I could see a reflection of some of the questions I have about my own work. Because he's an artist who has kind of in some ways sold out. And that's what you see in the film. You see an artist who's making too much money, who's making work because he knows people want that kind of work, not because it's what really, he's lost his way a little bit. And I think I can feel that in my own career, it's very easy to lose touch with the things that drove you to begin with, because you're thinking, well, an audience like this, I'll make lots of money doing that, or this is commercial. And so trying to find your real convictions, your real self, is a hard thing sometimes. I don't see myself as being an art filmmaker. I don't want to make art films that are difficult for an audience or which have a limited niche audience. I want to have a wide audience, not the widest audience, but I want to have people go and I want them to enjoy it, but I want it to be intelligent and different and challenging, maybe in a little way, but I want it to be an entertainment film in some way. Those films are hard. You either have to make a Marvel movie about Spider-Man or whatever, or you make an art movie. And I think that the reality is that television has taken that place. But I think in the moment, and not in a very satisfying way. I think there is some really good television, but I think people talk about the golden age of TV. Most of it is not very good. Most of it is soap opera. It's just about making you watch the next episode. Maybe the pilot is good, and then it's kind of like it's just watching characters go through the motions of a story every week, and you come back to those same characters. And I'm not putting that down, but that's old-fashioned television. That's what television used to be like. It hasn't really changed. There are some things, Breaking Bad, Sopranos, but they're masterpieces. There are a few masterpieces, but maybe not any more than there used to be. I don't know. And I think, but I would say this, I think it's because in television at the moment, it's a writer's medium, not a director's medium. So it doesn't use visual communication, it doesn't use sound, it doesn't use music in subtle ways, in ways that are going to communicate non-verbally. And I think too much of television is about da 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 da. It's theatre, it's soap opera, it's not the art of film. And I think the real problem is, I think that will get better. I think audiences will want more and more and more, and televisions get bigger and bigger at home, so you can have a more cinematic approach. But I think it is a shame that the big screen experience is dying out for people, except for these big spectacles. It's a shame. I love the feeling of coming into a dark room with strangers, and your senses are alert. You're experiencing every emotion in a much bigger way. And you have more patience as well in the cinema. You'll put up with a boring beginning, first 20 minutes setting up, nothing happening, and then it captures you in its ambience, its atmosphere. On television, they'd say, cut the first 20 minutes, let's go to where the murder happens and go. I do think television, the form of like a 10-episode series, so it doesn't go on forever, it has a beginning and a middle and an end, but it's like a long feature film, 10-hour feature film, but you can go into characters in a way that you can't in a feature film, where you're restricted by the length of time and by the 3-act structure. So you can make a 10-hour movie which is like an epic, and you can really go into characters in different perspectives. That, I think, is the future filmmaking in television. I find personally that there's not that much I want to see on Netflix, but my children, for them, Netflix, Amazon, that's everything, that's television. And so, I mean, I make them watch old films, and it's good for them. But I think the streaming services are fantastic, but you want there to be some competition. And at the moment, there isn't really much competition for Netflix. Amazon hasn't quite got going as they could, and maybe they will. But you want there to be competition within each country. So you want Globo here or BBC or whatever to be able to compete. But that means they have to have big budgets. They need to do less, and because people expect big budgets now. So they need to do less and do it better. And I think maybe what will happen is that national broadcasters will have to come together to do budgets to make things big enough. So co-productions will become more and more important, I think. I have children who are now just coming into their teenage years, and their tastes are so diverse. So they know all about Elvis Presley, they know all about Van Morrison, they listen to this, and they listen to Coldplay, and they listen to the Sex Pistols, and they can have it all. But I think the consequence is that it doesn't mean as much to them. I think in the days when you had to save a lot of money, go to the record store on Saturday morning, I'm spending money to buy this thing with a beautiful cover, and you brought it home and you played it again and again and again. You listened to every word and you followed in the newspapers about this star. I think people were more connected to music because it was harder to get, simply. So when you can have anything, nothing means as much, and that's just natural psychology of people. So I think there's good sides and bad sides. The weird thing is that I find with Spotify, I listen to less music. I don't know why. I listen to less because it's always there. So I have this in my head, I can listen to that later, or I get this like paralysis of choice. I could listen to that. Oh no, I could. I won't listen to anything. Whitney Houston's life was lived in public, but she didn't give much away about her inner life to the public. So the interviews that there are with her are very superficial. She doesn't really want to be there. So it's very difficult to somehow get inside her. And that's both the blessing and the curse, because the blessing because it makes her a mystery. And that, in a way, when you're making a film about a dead person, I think you're either doing one of two things. You're either communicating to people your enthusiasm for this person, like when I made the Bob Marley film, it was because I loved him and I thought I can tell his story better than it's been told before. It wasn't so much a mystery. Whereas with Whitney Houston, it feels like it's a mystery. So how did she go from being this beautiful, successful, incredibly talented young girl to being this drug-addled wreck in the last 10 years of her life? Why did that happen? How did that happen? So that's a mystery, but also it's the mystery of how can you ever know anybody really? And I think most documentaries that are biographical in nature have that at this heart, this very philosophical question about how can I represent someone's life and who they really are in an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever it is, without resorting to cliches. How can you know what really drove them? Because we don't often know even what drives ourselves. So I think that idea of the philosophical mystery is always a really interesting one for me, and particularly with Whitney Houston.